Bonjour. Welcome to the Weekly Driving. With me, Josh Howie, and Zekode Jote.
Hello!
Oh my god! Coming up on the show, we have film news as per usual. It's pretty good, considering we didn't think there was any. And then suddenly there were loads. We're going to do that. There's also a review on Mockingjay Part 2, which has just come out, which we saw last week. And some other bits. And bobs. And chobs. And slobs.
Good.
Deal with it.
A while back, there was some news that Ryan Gosling was rumoured to be a part of the Blade Runner sequel, but now it has been greenlit. We're not 100% sure, what the story is or whatnot. All we know is that Ryan Gosling is now attached to it.
I know that the idea is based off of a thought of Ridley Scott, even though he's not directing now, he's just producing. And it's meant to be set about 40 or what is it, about a couple decades after the original film. The original film set in 2019, which is kind of scary considering what the film looks like, and we're in 2015 now. But it's meant to be set around 2047. Is what I have here on my laptop.
Right.
And Harrison Ford has been quoted as saying the screenplay is the best he's ever read.
That's pretty good.
That's some confident stuff.
That is some confident stuff.
Considering Harrison Ford hates everyone and everything.
Yeah. I think in the right hands, obviously, it'd be really good. I mean, I like the idea of having Ryan Gosling as the lead role.
Well, it's meant to be. The directing it is Denis Villeneuve. Who we love.
Yeah, we do.
No, he's just done Sicario. He also did Enemy and Prisoners, two incredible films that you need to watch if you haven't seen them already. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. And along with Ridley Scott on producing it, there's also the guys behind The Blind Side, which is a really good American football film, true story, and P.S. I Love You, which I totally didn't cry at.
I didn't either, Josh.
It's really sad.
It is.
Broderick Johnson and Andrew K. Kozov. I'm going to go with Kozov. Them guys.
Yeah, I think I don't think there's a lot. I don't think we can really form an opinion really until the main stories come out. But since I read about him being rumoured to be attached, the only thing I can think of is having sort of Ryan Gosling's character from Drive, if he takes something from that and uses that in Blade Runner. I think that would go really well with the neo-noir style.
Definitely.
But Ryan Gosling's, I know I said last week that The Rock is probably the most charismatic actor. I think Ryan Gosling has that going for him. Especially in Only God Forgives, he takes a film and he can carry it with just how charming
he can give it life.
Yeah, and I think I'm not saying the film will be bad and Ryan Gosling will have to carry it, because we've got no idea, because I have a lot of faith in the director. I think that pairing is good. I like the idea of that.
I'm surprised they haven't done anything before, but I mean, he usually does stuff with Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman and things.
A couple of years, Jake Gyllenhaal's been his go-to guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, whether it's the studio's choice to get Ryan Gosling involved or the director's choice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm excited. I think he's a good actor, and Denis Villeneuve's an incredible director. I'm really excited for that. I'm just hoping that. I imagine there'll be a villain type character.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping it's as good as the original.
Yeah, I agree.
Rad. Excited.
Excitable.
10 out of 10. Maybe not. Probably about an 8, but still excited. Nonetheless. Moving on. There's a book coming out in next year, 2016, called The Girl Before, written by J.P. Delaney, and it's been picked up. The book is about basically a woman who falls in love with a house and the person who designed it, and moves in, and she finds out that 3 years prior, another woman similar to her moved into the house and passed away under suspicious circumstances, is what I believe. And it's basically a thriller. I'm excited to see Ron Howard direct stuff, because I think he's a really good director. I mean, he has bad marks, but
Yeah, I think I always approach Ron Howard in the frame of mind the same way I approach Ridley Scott films, is that he has films that are really, really good, but he also has films that can be relatively boring, and they can be just not great. So yeah, I think Ron Howard's a bit of an on-off director. I mean, obviously, again, it's the future, so we don't know exactly what the film's going to be like. But I mean, the story doesn't sound too bad. I mean, it sounds like something I'd be interested to go and watch, especially if Ron Howard's name was attached to it.
Yeah, I mean, he did the Da Vinci Code in Angels and Demons, so I mean,
Yeah,
worrying. But
again,
I mean, recently he's done Rush, which is one of my favourite films, and he did The Dilemma. I didn't know he did that, the Vince Vaughn one.
yeah,
That's pretty good actually. And he's done In the Heart of the Sea, which I'm very excited to go watch.
yeah, that does look really good.
Yeah.
I think two that spring to mind really about Ron Howard films that I do like are Beautiful Mind,
Yeah,
Russell Crowe, and
definitely.
Apollo 13. I mean, Apollo 13 I actually didn't enjoy as much as I thought I would, but it's still a very good and well-made film.
Yeah. He also did Ed TV with Matthew McConaughey, which is like
Yeah,
The Truman Show, but not as good.
Yeah,
It's very.
basically.
I really like it though. It's still good, but
it's all right. I mean, it's easy to watch. It's nothing
Yeah.
special. It's just a standard one of those films that you can watch and probably forget about.
yeah. Yeah, I'm quite excited to see that. I mean, I imagine I will probably see it. I don't think I'm not going to see it. But we'll see how that goes. I'm quite looking forward to it. Should we move on?
Can do.
There's a lot of films, like adaptations with girl in the name coming out. I mean,
Also, is this the book that's not been released?
yeah, it's not been released.
I mean, they must have a lot of faith in this book then.
I think they've read like the manuscripts and things like that.
Right.
Um,
Because to literally like get a director attached to an adaptation before the book's even been released, I mean,
yeah,
that's quite dangerous ground. But then again, if it comes off, then it's pretty impressive. I suppose actually the fact that they're making a film about it is more of an incentive to buy the book. So the two really go together.
yeah. Like loads of films with Gone Girls come out, Girl on the Train, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and all those. Sort of
Yeah.
things. Just loads of things with Girl in there. Just last bit of news for you today. Jennifer Lawrence is taking a swing at directing. She's not going to be acting in this film. She's basically picked a project called Project Delirium. It's about the details of a military career, the military career of Colonel James S. Ketchum, who was a psychiatrist by training. He basically fought the Soviets in a Cold War race to test psychochemicals that temporarily incapacitated the minds of soldiers in the field. The fear was that one side could gain advantage by frying the brains of the enemy, which could be rendered docile and harmless by nerve gas. The test subjects, which these tests ran between the 60s and 70s, sampled drugs that range from like LSD and nerve agents such as VX and BZ. That's what I'm reading here. It doesn't sound like a comedy, which is what she's sort of like billing it as. I mean, I guess when you think of things like Fargo, they don't sound like comedies, but I imagine it would be a dark comedy. And I mean, I don't think it's not within a range. I mean, I think the type of person she is and her experience, I think she'd be able to direct a well enough film, like a good enough film. Because I mean, we've seen actors become directors, and obviously sometimes it doesn't work, but then you get your Clint Eastwoods, you get your Ben Afflecks, who excel at directing, and it would be nice to see her do well.
Yeah, I'm glad she's not also like she's not starring in it as well. Because,
yeah, she's not acting.
I've heard a lot about Angelina Jolie's new film By the Sea.
Yeah,
and apparently it's more of just like a vanity project for her. Like apparently it just feels like it's a film just so she can put herself on screen with her husband. Apparently that's what it feels like. I mean, we'll have to go and watch it for ourselves to make any sort of judgment. The fact that Jennifer Lawrence isn't putting herself in the film proves that she is actually trying to tell this story rather than just make a film for herself.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it'd be interesting to see her direct.
Yeah, because she's such like a well-known and well-loved like figure as a celebrity. So yeah, I'd like to see her do more things. Essentially.
Yeah, I would be rooting for her for the film to be good if she made a film.
Definitely.
Like, yeah, I've got nothing else to say. I didn't know what I said.
Right. Fair enough. With that in mind, we'll move on to our review of The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. I don't know. Right. The film is basically the conclusion to the Hunger Games trilogy, now quadrilogy, which they didn't need to do. Yeah. And yeah, it's all right. Right. My sum up of this film is that there are 2 incredible action sequences, and the rest is pretty boring.
I'm going to say straight off the bat, I gave it a 3 out of 5.
After initially giving it a 2
I was
going to
give it 2, but at the end of the day, the film is still reasonably entertaining.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was entertaining when we were watching it.
Yeah, the problem is, like, there was just so much that we could pick about it that just, like, I agree. There is literally one. In fact, the thing for me that actually saves it for the film is that underground action sequence.
Yeah, that's all.
That's brilliant.
See, I mean, I've read the book, so I know all this sort of things, but that whole sequence, it felt so. It was kind of out of place for the Hunger Games as a franchise, but it works so well, and it was just like it suddenly becomes a really intense thriller for about like 20 minutes, and it was just executed so well, and I just wish the rest of the film not had been like that scene in particular. I didn't want an action thrill ride from start to finish, but I wish there was more scenes like that, because there's another scene, like it's in the trailer. They're walking through the capital trying to get like just through to the center essentially, and there's loads of booby traps on the way, and they spend a lot of time going, oh, there's a trap there, let's make it go off and stand still while nothing else happens. And you're like, fair enough, you'd probably do that, but it's not really entertaining. So I think the movie just slowed down a lot in certain bits, and I think it didn't, because it had been put out into 2 films, it didn't, like, a lot of the scenes were dragged out purposefully to just run up the time.
Yeah, I think the thing with the Hunger Games is it's got, like, obviously it's got its own fan base, and it's quite a high grossing, I mean, one of the highest, I imagine. But yeah, I just felt, because I don't love the franchise as much as other people do, like it's a fanboy franchise essentially, and I just kind of felt I was kind of watching it just like, I feel as though if I was a fanboy I would enjoy seeing all the characters together and this big finale. But to me it was just like an action adventure thing, and it was just like relatively mundane.
See, this is the thing, I really enjoyed the series, I enjoyed the books, and it was so, like, one thing that I came away from it was like I was just so underwhelmed by, because like the first film is good, the second film is great, the third film is okay, and this one finishes it. And that's about it. Like, I don't know, there were so many points in this film where I was like, I wish this had ended by now.
Yeah.
I can't go over how, like, it's just reiterating what I was saying before, like so many scenes just drag on and on and on, and it's like, stop.
Yeah.
And it's so predictable. The dialogue is awful.
Yeah, I mean the film is not written very well. Admittedly, the bit where there's a couple of bits where you think, yeah, that's not bad.
I just think like the dialogue in this film is so bad. Julianne Moore has, like, I love Julianne Moore. I think she's one of my favourite actresses, and she is just not good. Like, the writing's really bad for her dialogue in particular, I think, because Keith Sutherland's, like, his character, his dialogue, his actions in the film are all solid. They're like, there's a certain point where we both, after watching it and coming out, we were just like, I was really impressed with that. But she just had nothing to her character, and I don't know. It's, even if you hadn't read the books, everything that happened was a bit more predictable, just because of, like, dialogue that didn't need to be there or things like that. But yeah, I mean, like I say, I enjoyed the film watching it in the cinema, but overall, like, looking back, I just wasn't impressed. There are certain deaths in this film, obviously I'm not going to say who, but like, they happen and you're just like, okay, that's happened now. I guess we're moving on. And, it's just, I don't think they hit.
Yeah, I'll end my bit on a positive, though. It's sort of a positive. The performances are not that great, considering the calibre of the cast, but the one that stood out was Josh Hutcherson. I don't rate him as an actor, but he actually kind of stole the show. Like, he's the only one who really, his character, I suppose it was probably more of a challenge for the actor, and he just sold it really well.
Yeah.
I love Jennifer Lawrence, but I think by the end of the film I was just sick of seeing her as Katniss. And like you said, Kiefer Sutherland was solid in it. He's solid in most things. I'm not a huge fan of Liam Hemsworth. I think he's part of this, like, the generation that I've come to the terms where I start describing him as the Divergent actors. I know he's not in Divergent, but he's the same caliber as people like Jai Courtney.
Hey, Miles Teller's in Divergent.
I'm not saying anything wrong with Miles Teller. He's good. He's good in Whiplash. Whiplash saved him.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that awkward moment, even though you don't like it that much, I think is a very solid rom-com.
No, it's not that I don't like it. I think it is alright.
Yeah.
But we're going off on a tangent. We'll stop. This is a review.
Him and... Right, we're not going to say anything because the audience cannot see.
Well, okay, we're going off on a tangent. This is a review of Hunger Games. But yeah, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Liam Hemsworth. Philip Seymour Hoffman is just... he's not in the film that much, so to say whether he was good or bad, he was solid.
I think that's the saddest part of the film. Like, there's loads of deaths and things, but that I just wasn't affected by. When Philip Seymour Hoffman comes up on screen for the first time, it hits. Like,
yeah, you realise that he's never going to be in a film again. Yeah. And the fact that his last film is this one, it kind of just like, makes me very sad.
But what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? You can't stop stuff like that.
Solid actor. But yeah, no, you were being positive.
Yeah, sorry. I went negative again. No, I'm just going to say the positive thing about it is Josh Hutcherson. I have faith in this actor now.
Yeah. I think he's got a decent future as
well.
Yeah,
I think he does. I think we were used to seeing him as a kid, like in things like Zathura and kicking and screaming.
Is he in Bridge to Terabithia?
Yeah.
Right, let's go watch that and just cry.
But yeah, I'm not saying they're good films. And as a child actor, he was all right. And that's probably why I didn't have faith in him coming into this film. But yeah, he stole the show for me, I think.
Cool.
Very good.
Proud.
Proudy.
I'll end on a negative.
Okay, Josh's going to end on a negative. Okay.
No, it's just like this whole film is wrapped up. It tries to do the Return of the King thing where it has multiple endings, and it doesn't work at all. Like, it should have had one ending and stopped. And or it's like the same thing happened with part one, because part one ends where Peter, they recapture Peter, and he suddenly flips out at Katniss, and then one of the guys like hits him with the butt of their gun or something like that and knocks him out, and the screen goes black, and you're like, solid, end there. And then it comes back for like another minute of screen time. It's just like, well, you should have ended it there. And then this film sort of does the same thing. Like, it ends, goes black, and you're like, titles or credits even, and it doesn't. Then another scene comes in. This is like another 2-3 minutes, and then it ends, and you're like, this could have ended a little while ago. That's another point though. Like, thinking about the way it ends, the first one ends. This one opens and with such an underwhelming shot. It's just that, like, it's just Katniss in hospital in a neck brace, and it's like, okay, I guess the movie started then.
Yeah.
Like, there's no intro. It's just you're there, which is fair enough because it's part 2, I guess. But it still annoyed me. But anyway, like I said, we've said it enough times. Like, it's entertaining to watch, but I'm going to buy all the DVDs because I've got them already. Just to fill the collection. Probably not going to watch it unless I'm watching all of them at once. But it's upsetting because the first 2 were so strong, especially Catching Fire, which I think is incredible.
Catching Fire is brilliant.
Yeah,
I love the concept of the whole game. But yeah,
that's something this is missing. What they should have done with this is that they have a franchise called The Hunger Games. I know they were keeping to the books and things like that, but they set it all up so, like, getting into the capital should have been like a Hunger Games and all televised. They don't show any like them televising it because they make a point that it's going to be televised and all this sort of stuff, and don't show it once. Like it's not brought up that their deaths. I mean it is, but it's more like it's Stanley Tucci's character, and he just does a bit of news. It's not like a Hunger Games sort of thing, which is the interesting like selling point of this franchise. And they could have done so much with it, and they just didn't.
Yeah, that's also another thing. The thing that I think about the first two films, which I love so much, is Stanley Tucci.
Yeah,
he's so brilliant, and he's just not in it. I know he's not a major character, and like he's not that important as a character, but he's a good actor, and they've got so many good actors in it, and they just felt a bit underused. Again, Philip Seymour Hoffman. I know it might have just been like a difficulty with how many scenes they'd really had with him.
Yeah.
But and again, it might have been his character as well. I don't know. I've not read the books.
But yeah, overall, Hunger Games. If you want, go watch it. If you don't, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I think if you've read the books, I don't know. I don't know whether it's better to have read the books or not. In terms of this film, to be honest, I think go watch it because of those two scenes that are just really well done. Because like it's there, and they show it, and it's just the rest of the film isn't.
Yeah,
that's my point, my view, my grade.
I absolutely crap myself in the cinema.
Oh my god, I know.
Jesus, that is literally the scaredest I've ever been at a film.
Scaredest.
But like, I thought I'd shit myself at the point.
That was good. Right.
As we've been talking about Hunger Games, and the last two Hunger Games have been Mockingjay Part 1 and Mockingjay Part 2, we're going to talk about whether or not these young adult films using Part 1 and Part 2 is a good idea.
I don't think is it just YA films?
Well, it's not just YA films. I mean, Harry Potter's not really a YA film.
No, it's more...
But, okay, we'll just talk about films in general that are using this way of...
This template.
Yeah, this way of...
Making more money.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like, there's no other reason for it.
Because, I mean, The Hobbit, like, I know it's not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
But The Hobbit being turned into 3 films when it could have been just 1.
Yeah.
I think it could have been 2.
I think that's half and half, because I know Peter Jackson said that he just had too much, like, quantity to make one film. But...
It could have been.
The 3 films are pretty dragged.
I think they just wanted, like, they wanted to have a trilogy, like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, that they could compare, as opposed to having 2 films, which would have been better.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But like, there's nothing wrong with a film and a sequel, especially if the sequel's really good. Which I think, if they'd done it in 2 films, they'd have been 2 solid films.
Yeah.
But now they're 3 mediocre films, in my mind.
I don't think... I mean, except for the... last week I mentioned that a couple of biopics have basically just made 2 films and it's Part 1, Part 2.
Like Shay.
They're good.
Yeah.
But I don't... Other than them, like Shay and Marine, I don't think I've watched a Part 1 film that I thought that was totally worth watching. Harry Potter... What?
Kill Bill.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, like
the end of a franchise where they go Part 1, blah blah blah.
Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows Part 1 was boring.
It was boring.
Mockingjay Part 1 was boring.
Boring.
They save the action sequences for the most part for the Part 2, and it's just like, just make one film. I know you want to make loads of money, which you will do because people are going to go and watch it because they've invested in these franchises, but it's just so unnecessary, and it makes films worse.
Yeah, and even Marvel are going to do it.
Yeah,
back
exactly.
End of the year.
See,
back end of the decade.
Thing is, with Marvel, you have Infinity Part 1, then you have 2 films in between that and Infinity War Part 2, and I think that I mean, I don't think it's going to be a strong like Part 1, Part 2, and like Part 1 is going to be full flat. I think Part 1's going to be a great film, and I think Part 2's going to be a great film. I think they're going to be 2 very strong standalones that are just sharing the same name because it will be the same story.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a lot of change happening at the end of Part 1 going into Part 2.
Yeah.
I think that'll do it well.
Yeah, if there's 2 films in between, I think that's fine because there'll be 2 different like stories. But it's like things like I know Maze Runner and Divergent series are doing the part 1, part 2 thing, and again they will rake in money because people will go to see them.
Bloody Twilight's fault, isn't it?
It is Twilight's fault, and just they should have stopped before they even started pre-production on the first one, because they are terrible films.
Twilight have ruined so many things. Like they gave Kristen Stewart a bad acting name
when she is actually a good actress,
really good actress, despite how bad of a person she is.
Yeah.
Robert Pattinson's a good actor,
and now he hates acting. I'm pretty sure he hates the fact that he's been labelled as Edward.
Yeah.
He hates it, apparently.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
I hate it.
I mean, I've got Taylor Lautner's a crap actor, so I don't know
yeah, who cares? But yeah, it's just like it did a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
Back to the part 1, part 2 stuff. I'm just kind of annoyed.
I don't like it. I mean, admittedly, Harry Potter Deathly Hallows Part 2 is, I consider it to be the second best Harry Potter film, but it is good. Like, if you like Harry Potter, it depends if you like Harry Potter. Again, it's with the source material and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like, I love Harry Potter, and if you like the last book, you'll appreciate the fact that they used the Battle of Hogwarts for the entire of the last film, and that's really good. But the first one's really boring.
Yeah, it's so boring.
It's basically them walking around. But again, in the book, I'd probably say about 60% of the book is them walking around. So
yeah, but this is the thing. I've kind of touched on it before when we talked about adaptations and things like that. But people who direct book adaptations to film need to know that they can take certain liberties, and they need to realise that some things in a book will not translate to film.
Yeah.
And they need to think of fresher ways to do them. And also, if you're doing something like, we'll go off on a bit of a tangent, because, for example, The Walking Dead, which is is my favourite show, and I read the comics, and they're the best comics out there. And in the comics, people die, and people come in at completely different times, and it happens to completely different characters in the show. Like, for example, in the comic book, one character gets his leg cut off, and in the show it's done to a different character because the first character's already gone, and things like that. And they chop and change, so it's kept fresh with, like, a book goer, like someone who's read the books will go into the film and be smug and be like, I know what's going to happen. And when things happen that do relate, they'll be like, oh, I know this was going to happen, sort of stuff. But then when something happens to a different character, it still takes them by surprise. And I think, even though if you want to see your favourite book on screen, if you can have things, if it's going to be like a franchise or a TV show, and they can have things like that can have the change, and they can keep every audience member suspended, I think that's what you want to aim for, as opposed to just completely doing a solid transcript on screen.
Yeah.
Tangent over.
Yeah,
back
tangent
to part
over.
1, part 2.
Yeah. I think people, I mean, it's not really about part 1, part 2, it's more about just adapting a book. I mean, depends how faithful fans are of the book, but I just think that you don't need to literally put the book on screen. I think you can do your own thing with it, as long as it's done for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of people get like fan angry because they don't get exactly what they want. But I mean, I think directors, especially good directors, deserve the respect to do something different, especially if it works, which it does a lot of the time.
Yeah, I agree.
Grand. Part 1 and part 2 should not do.
Yeah, they shouldn't. I've said this since I found out about Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2, and I've said this since Harry Potter. You shouldn't do it.
Mockingjay is like the shortest book, isn't it? Catching Fire is the longest book, and they did a hell of a good... That's the best film. It's perfectly paced, and it's so well done. Mockingjay could have been one film. It didn't need to be.
Yeah, it really didn't.
I think if they condensed it down to one film, they would have had a solid... maybe 2 hour 20 film.
I would have been happy
with.
Yeah.
Like,
I would have been happy with a 2.5 hour Mockingjay film,
then,
where they'd put all the best bits and clumped them together and to make an actually decent film, not a drawn out film.
All killer, no filler.
Yeah.
Some 41. But yeah. But if they'd done that, like, just had a full-fledged, very fleshed out, perfect film, as opposed to having two ones that have about an hour in them each that is pure filler or scenes being overdone or anything like that. It would have just worked out so well. And I know like they wouldn't have made as much money, but they would have had better films. I think looking back, people want better films than like I would have. Obviously, we're really into films, so we're going to be like this anyway.
Yeah.
But I would have loved a perfect trilogy because it was en route. Like after 1 and 2, it was en route to have a great trilogy, especially from a YA novel or series of novels, because none of the others are good. Like Maze Runner's trying, and Divergent's trash, but like, and obviously there was Twilight. But the Hunger Games are a solid YA concept novels films until they made it part 1, part 2, because they could have had a Mockingjay done and it'd have been great, and they just didn't.
Yeah.
Rant over, I think.
Each week, me and Josh go through a year in film. We'll talk about our favourites, our recommendations for you, and our disappointments of the year, and we'll just go through the Oscars of that year. So, the one we picked this week was 1992. This week was 1992.
We'll keep it all in.
So, Josh, you want to start us off?
Want me to go first?
You
no
can
worries.
do.
Right, 1992 was not. I mean, it had some gems, but it wasn't like.
It's no 1994.
It is no 1994.
But yeah, it did have some good ones.
Or 2000.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, Tarantino kicked off with Reservoir Dogs, which is my favourite. That's my best of the year. Well, it's not actually, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
There were loads of solid ones like Mighty Ducks. Oh my god, if you haven't seen Mighty Ducks, like the entire trilogy, as a child, you grew up wrong. But yeah, Reservoir Dogs, obviously, I assume most people know it. It's the bank robbery, it's a jewelry store robbery going wrong, and it's set in the aftermath in a warehouse between a bunch of so well-written characters. And it's just an incredible film by Tarantino, doing what he does best with dialogue, and it's just so good. You got to watch it. Michael Madsen, who plays Mr. Blonde in it, is incredible. His whole scene, like everything he does, is just perfect. And it has some really strong performances from pretty much everyone who's in it, like Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth, etc. And I mean, Tarantino's in it because it's a Tarantino film, so he's got to be in it. Obviously, he's terrible, but what are you going to do? My worst, or I wouldn't say worst, but letdown of the year was Batman Returns with Michael Keaton and Danny DeVito as the Penguin. Yeah. Well, where I've got it up here, and what's her name? Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman / Selena Kyle, which is basically just Catwoman. But yeah, I enjoyed Tim Burton's first Batman so much. I thought it was a really good dark take on the character, considering the films before that was the 1966 Adam West Batman, which was just a joke. And comic book characters in general before that were very taken lightly, very colourful. We had the Christopher Reeve Batman, Superman's coming a little later and things like that. This was just a really strong, dark, that changed the face of these films until Batman and Robin came out and ruined everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I've watched these this quadrilogy multiple times. Obviously, Batman and Robin is terrible. I do actually. I wouldn't necessarily call Batman Forever a guilty pleasure. Because,
I would call it a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, I think everyone else would, because it's actually terrible. But I would just really enjoy it.
Yeah, really, it's not a good film, but I actually enjoy Jim Carrey in that film a lot.
Him and Tommy Lee Jones are great in that film. And I actually like Val Kilmer as Batman, because he introduced the I'm Batman sort of voice. He was the first one to actually change his voice, because Michael Keaton just decided to do it, not do it at all. But no, I don't particularly like the way Danny DeVito played the Penguin, because I mean Penguin's like one of my least favorite Batman villains. Less so now because of the storylines in the comic books, which are bringing him a bit more, giving him a bit more fleshed out and stuff. But making him like this creature, like proper creature, I get that they were doing a dark version, but it wasn't necessary. And like he's such, I know they dabbled in the politics of it all, because obviously he runs for mayor and things like that. But like Cobblepot, Oswald Cobblepot, who is the Penguin, is such a political character in the comic books, in my mind anyway. And I don't think they hit that home enough. I just don't think it was really well rounded as that character. I also didn't like Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman too much. I mean, she was a good part of the film overall, but I just didn't feel it. It's like out of the 4 films, those like Batman Returns is the last one I want to watch, because at least with Batman and Robin you can, get drunk off every time something's completely incorrect or just terrible. But yeah, it just was a letdown for me. Do you want to?
I'm just gonna reply to that. I actually really enjoyed Batman Returns. Like, I know I don't. I'm not as into the comic books as you are, and like, I don't appreciate it for its source material. I appreciate it as a film. I mean, I enjoyed the Michael Keaton one, and Jack Nicholson in the first one is great. But I actually really enjoyed Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman as well. I mean, you got to appreciate a little bit of Christopher Walken now and again.
I know. I didn't mention it, but yeah.
Didn't like Penguin in it, I'll admit that. But as entertainment goes, I still found it really entertaining. I was actually surprised by how much it entertained me. Because, it's not like no one considers it to be anywhere near as entertaining as, like, the Christopher Nolan trilogy.
Yeah, obviously.
But I actually probably found it more entertaining than the first Batman.
Really?
Yeah, just in terms of entertainment.
You have Jack Nicholson dancing to Prince.
Characters, the first one's better. But, yeah, and in story it's better. But entertainment value, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Right, so
winner.
The film with better characters and story is
no, but
not
just
as
for the things
the
on screen.
Entertainment factor.
Just the
Shouting.
things on screen. Just the things on screen, and just how it's actually quite funny as well.
Yeah, fair enough.
I actually do. Thinking about it, I do actually love that film.
I don't. So you're wrong. Moving on, it's still my section.
I know. I just wanted to reply. That's all.
Fair enough. What have I done? I've done best. I've done worst. My recommendation is my actual favourite of the year, but I think less people have heard about it, or at least have seen it. You might have heard about it. It's the basketball comedy White Men Can't Jump with Woody Harrelson, who is my favourite actor, and Wesley Snipes before he fell off the grid and got arrested. It's basically the film opens with Wesley Snipes and a bunch of other guys playing basketball, and Woody Harrelson's like the white guy who yeah, Woody Harrelson's like the white guy who sits on the side and then sort of gets dragged into the game and hustles them, gets a bit of money out of them, Wesley Snipes in particular. And then afterwards, like, Wesley Snipes shows up at his apartment and they sort of form an alliance to just hustle people and get a bit of money. Things like that. And something incredible about this film is just the wit, the humour, the your mum jokes and things like that. It's just so well done. And the general character piece and character development in this film is incredible. The music's great. Another point, it's so well rounded and has a strong drama feel to it, despite being, for the most part, a comedy, in my opinion. It's just one of those films that I think was near perfect. I mean, I like Rosie Perez, who plays Woody Harrelson's girlfriend, Mrs. whatever. But I think she's a feisty character and she does well. It's the same thing we talked about when we mentioned Capote and how Philip Seymour Hoffman, like, it's what it should be, but it's so annoying to listen to. It's the same concept. I cannot stand to listen to her voice, and that is the one thing that annoys me about this film. Because apart from that, it is just great.
I'll admit, White Men Can't Jump did take me by surprise. It is an entertaining film. But yeah, my ones for 1992. My favourite, well, my favourite is Reservoir Dogs, but I think me and Josh both collectively just love Tarantino in that film. So I went with another one that I love, which is Glengarry Glen Ross. It basically, to sum it up really, it just basically revolves around an estate agent's office, and they're all fighting over some like deals, and it's just basically it's within an evening of an estate agent's office and things going on. But yeah, it's based on a play. So basically the reason I love it is it's one of those films where the scenes are about 15, 20 minutes long, and it's so dialogue based, and you need really good actors for a film like that. It's like how I mentioned that with Doubt, that's based on a play, and then there's like this scene with Amy Adams and blah blah, and like they're all, and it's really back and forth. This is that, but like so much better. Like the people in it, you got Al Pacino, Ed Harris, Alan Arkin, Jack Lemmon, Kevin Spacey, and Alec Baldwin.
Strong,
very
strong cast.
And they literally all are just on the top of their game. It's literally the best performance I've seen from every single one of them.
Seriously?
Maybe Kevin Spacey in Usual Suspects or Seven is probably better, because he's a main part, but he does get outshone a tad, because Jack Lemmon's just like a legend, and Al Pacino is my favourite, and Ed Harris is great, and Alan Arkin is also great. Alec Baldwin, it's the best I've ever seen him, and he's only in it for about 5 minutes, and he's amazing in it.
I think Alan Arkin's really underused these days. I think he's a really strong actor.
Yeah, he is.
Like the last thing I think I know him from was Argo, which was really good.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was Ben Affleck's latest directorial. But yeah, he was really good in that. But I haven't heard of him much otherwise.
No.
He's in like fucking.
He's quite old though, isn't he?
Marley and Me and
yeah, yeah. But yeah, this film, if you want to watch a film just to appreciate how talented some of the actors are from Hollywood, watch this, because it's literally it almost gave me goosebumps when I was watching it. Like watching Al Pacino just shout at everyone. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful. It's a beautiful sight. But yeah, watch that because it's class. My disappointment was Alien 3, because the first two Alien films are really, really good. Yeah. And this one, come in, you've got Sigourney Weaver back, you've got David Fincher directing. Absolutely atrocious.
It's painful.
It is really painful. Honestly painful, and David Fincher is like one of my favourite directors, and that's just a shameful piece of... I mean, admittedly, he has said that he actually doesn't like the film himself, which he shouldn't.
How dare you like your own film?
But yeah, it's just... I mean, Sigourney Weaver, she's fine as Ripley. Like, she can play that. I'm pretty sure she can play that in her sleep by now. But I don't think anyone was expecting anything else of her. But yeah, the story's weak. I mean, it tries to be really gritty and take Alien to a whole new level, but it's just really not as entertaining or as thrilling or as intense as the first two. And I mean, I'll give it props. It's better than Alien Resurrection. Do
you think if Alien and Aliens hadn't come about and this was like the first Alien film or whatever, taking it like the David Fincher gritty route, if he just made that standalone film, would you think that better?
I like the idea of an Alien film being gritty, like David Fincher gritty, and I think at times it was like there was times of intensity, but I think if it was on its own, to me it would have just been sort of like a standard sci-fi film.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been the Alien that we know today.
Yeah. So I mean, it's David Fincher's worst film that I've seen by quite a lot, I think. But yeah, it's just... I've watched all 4 Alien films. I suppose 5 if you count Prometheus, but I haven't seen Prometheus because it doesn't really appeal to me. Just because Alien Resurrection and Alien 3 are both dreadful, both really good directors on them as well, which makes me very, very sad. But yeah, we'll move on. My recommendation is The Player. No, The Player. No, my recommendation is The Player. It's sort of like a heavy meta crime comedy, sort of. It's Robert Altman, who's also directed MASH and Gosford Park. He's not directed anything recently because he passed away like a few years ago. But Gosford Park is probably the last one I remember watching. He has directed more after that though. But yeah, The Player is Tim Robbins, and who plays a Hollywood producer. And as he flutters around during this crime story, you get like the odd cameo from people from Hollywood, and it's really entertaining. But they don't let the meta get away from the actual story. Like, the story is that someone who he sent a script into him, he rang them up and was like, yeah, I'll read it and I'll let you know. And he doesn't, and this guy wants like revenge. And Tim Robbins ends up killing someone that he thinks did this, and then it's about the writer who actually threatened him, who saw him kill this guy. And it's about him trying to deal with all this whilst trying to like live this life as a Hollywood producer as well. And it's really well written. Like, it's really well written. And Tim Robbins is solid, as always, because he's a great actor.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's solid acting, solid direction, solid writing. Just the whole thing comes together, and it's really funny as well. Like, it's a dark comedy, but it is really good, and you should watch that as well.
Soon.
Should we move on to the Oscars?
We shall move on to the Oscars.
The Oscars we're doing the 1993 Oscars, so that's the 65th Oscars. Obviously, films from 1992 would have been nominated in 93. Just to kick us off, Best Picture was Unforgiven.
Very strong. Like, one of my... I know I haven't mentioned it already, but like, as a Best Picture, I think it's well deserved, because obviously, well, I'm a really big Western fan, and Clint Eastwood with Morgan Freeman in that, and Gene Hackman, who was incredible in it. I think it's such a solid Western, considering it came out in 92, and like, I mean, obviously you've got your older Westerns, but this really is a strong Clint Eastwood as an old man in it. It hits. It's really good.
Yeah, I think it is a good film. Personally, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm not a huge fan of the genre. Like, there are Westerns that I think are brilliant, like older Westerns, and this one is really entertaining. I personally think A Few Good Men is better than this, and probably should have won. Just because that film kind of took me by surprise how much I loved it. It's a Rob Reiner film, and it's got the whole "you can't handle the truth." But yeah, I found A Few Good Men to be more thrilling and entertaining than Unforgiven. But like, I'm not going to take anything away from Unforgiven. It is really entertaining, and I did really enjoy it. But I personally think A Few Good Men should have won.
No, I understand. Like, I completely agree with the nomination of both of those films. I would have been happy either way, whichever had won. Just, because I prefer Westerns, I'm happier that Unforgiven won.
Obviously, Best Director was also
Clint Eastwood
for Unforgiven.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that at all.
Robert Altman, who directed The Player, was
That
nominated.
was what I was going to mention. Yeah. He, at least, I mean, I'm glad he got a mention.
Yeah, definitely.
At least, because the Oscars did like Robert Altman, especially screenplay wise. They liked him. He's just one of those directors that always used to crop up with the odd nomination. But yeah, I've got no problem with Eastwood winning again. Like, Unforgiven is an entertaining film. Best Actor was Al Pacino for Scent of a Woman. I should be very, very happy about this.
Except
Scent of a Woman is really dragged out, and it's not that good. And Al Pacino's performance is not his best. Like, I feel they gave him this award because it's Al Pacino, and they thought, oh, we haven't given him an Oscar yet, let's just give him an Oscar. He should have won for Godfather Part 2.
Right, yeah.
He should have. And Robert Downey Jr. should have won for Chaplin.
Yeah, I was going to say, my problem with this is, like, in that, the nominations, you have Robert Downey Jr. as Chaplin and Charlie Chaplin. As Charlie Chaplin and Chaplin, sorry. Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven. You've got Denzel Washington as Malcolm X in Malcolm X.
Yeah. And as dragged out as Malcolm X is, Denzel
Yeah.
Washington's very good in it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it just makes me so angry that Al Pacino is my favourite director. Al Pacino is my favourite actor. And yeah, it just kind of felt like they were giving him the award because his first nomination was like 21 years before that, and he made such an impact on Hollywood. They thought, well, Al Pacino, he should get one really. Like, oh, he's playing a blind guy. That's tough. We'll just give him that. But you know what? He was nominated twice this year.
Yeah, he was nominated.
He was nominated for
Supporting.
He should have won for Glengarry Glen Ross. He should have won. He's so much better in that.
Yeah, I mean, best supporting actor. You've got.
That's a really hard group.
Yeah, I know. You've got Al Pacino for Glengarry Glen Ross. You've got Jack Nicholson for A Few Good Men. You've got Gene Hackman, who won it for Unforgiven, which I'm not opposed to, and a few others. But like,
I think I would have been. Obviously, I would want Al Pacino to win that, but also I would have been happy with Jack Nicholson as well.
Yeah,
because Jack Nicholson's great.
It
in
was
A Few Good
solid
Men as well.
That the actors that year were solid.
Yeah.
Do you want to do actresses?
Yeah, best actress was Emma Thompson for Howard's End.
Supporting is Marissa Tomei for My Cousin Vinny.
I have seen that.
With what's his name?
Joe Pesci.
Joe Pesci, that's it.
It's got I have seen My Cousin Vinny. The film was a bit of a letdown actually. It was not as entertaining as I thought it was going to be. Marissa Tomei's good. Is she Oscar winning good? No. But she is good in it. I'll give her that. Yeah, it's the film itself. I mean, obviously it wasn't really nominated for much else other than that. Whether it was nominated for anything else, I'm not sure. But yeah, Marissa, it just doesn't. When you watch it, you notice that she's quite funny in it, and she has the odd bit where she's good. You just don't watch it and think, oh well, she's going to win an Oscar for that. Definitely, it's spot on. Even you don't even think, oh, she'll get a nomination for that. It's just just a standard performance, really. I think it's a bit odd that she won, really.
My problem, I think. Because like obviously this year for Oscars was actually pretty decent. My biggest problem is that I'm looking right now at Best Original Screenplay and Best Adapted Screenplay. Is there a mention of Quentin Tarantino for Reservoir Dogs?
No,
there's not.
But he's not mentioned for anything.
He's not mentioned at all. And I think if Reservoir Dogs had been made now, it would have had so many nominations.
Yeah. I think the problem with Reservoir Dogs is it became obviously a cult classic, rather than being. And Quentin Tarantino was just starting out.
It was his film that was picked up.
Yeah, Pulp
by
Fiction.
Harvey Keitel.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction really was the film that. I mean, it's not the film that like made Quentin Tarantino huge, because Reservoir Dogs still was an amazing film, but Pulp Fiction was really the one that got him noticed by the Academy, and he's been nominated for Best Director and Best Original Screenplay. He was won also for Django and Pulp Fiction. But yeah, Reservoir Dogs is just as good as those two screenplays. Well, not Pulp Fiction, but it's just as good as Django and. They're my
three favourite films by Tarantino: Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and Django
I agree,
Unchained.
but I prefer Inglourious to Django.
Do you really? I like Inglourious is actually one of my low.
Django's more stylish, and I'm not saying I don't love it because I do.
The soundtrack.
And the soundtrack is amazing.
The soundtrack to that is incredible.
But I mean, it's probably because I'm more partial towards war films than I am. Westerns. Obviously, they're both.
This is the thing with Unforgiven and A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
Like, I'm more westerns, you're more war.
Like A Few Good Men is a war courtroom drama, and that courtroom dramas are great when they're done properly. They're really great.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of other snubs, was again I'll bring up Glengarry Glen Ross. It wasn't nominated for adapted screenplay, which it should have been. I'm happy The Player was nominated because it should have been, and it's Robert Altman, and he was obviously going to get nominated for it.
Yeah.
But Glengarry Glen Ross should have been nominated. Honestly, Glengarry. Blah, blah, blah. I'm saying that too much. Glengarry Glen Ross. It's been, for me, it's one of the best written films.
I think, in terms of snubs, Michael Madsen should have been nominated for Best Supporting. I think he really sells that. I think he's the only one in that film I would say deserves a nomination. I don't think any of the others.
I think everyone's pretty solid. I mean, Tarantino's not no actor.
Yeah, I know.
But everyone's pretty solid.
Like Tim Roth, and I think Harvey Keitel plays Harvey Keitel. It's not like one of his best.
Yeah, he's
films.
Harvey Keitel's just a solid actor in most things.
It's like the Jeff Daniels now. He's just in everything all of a sudden. He's really solid in everything. But no, I think Tim Roth did really well in that role. But yeah, I just feel like Michael Madsen really hit the mark with Mr. Blonde.
Yeah. And obviously Tarantino wanted him to be in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Didn't he? But because
it was meant to be a prequel.
Yeah,
It was meant to be.
because I did read like a list of actors that he'd written down for each role, and under Vincent, or was it I think Vic Vega. He was
Vic Vega's,
originally it was written as Vic Vega, and then it said Vic Vega, obviously Michael Madsen, and it said John Travolta underneath.
Vic Vega's Reservoir Dogs, Vincent Vega.
Yeah, what I'm saying is the list.
Yeah.
The list that was written down for Pulp Fiction. I think he originally obviously wanted it to be a prequel. So for when it said Vic Vega, it said he'd written. He obviously had wanted to write that character, and he'd written obviously Michael Madsen, and then John Travolta underneath, like saying just as happy to have him. Like I can't remember where I read it.
This is the thing. John Travolta had done like Carrie and Saturday Night Fever and things like that, and he was sort of that guy. He did Grease, and then he did Pulp Fiction, and it was just like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Like, I think John Travolta. It's not as common these days because I think John Travolta's career was like on the edge, and then Tarantino picked him up and was like, I'm going to have him, and he did, and it was incredible. I think these days actors who aren't so great in the early roles or are dying off tend to get their shot at getting back to it, which a lot of actors have done. I think. Like you've got your Robert Downey Jr.'s and people like even you got your Zac Efron who, and like we were saying earlier with like Kristen Stewart and Robin Pattinson, obviously their biggest things to begin with were like Twilight, which was awful, and then now they're both in really good films.
Yeah.
But
but basically to go back to Oscar snubs, which we were on, I think like I said, the biggest two for me is basically Reservoir Dogs not being nominated for anything, and Glengarry. Oh my God, Glengarry Glen Ross. I've said it too much that I just can't say anymore. Glengarry Glen Ross was not nominated for Adapted, which it definitely should have been. But
it's a shame that Best Animation, the category for it wasn't introduced.
To be fair though,
2000s.
I can imagine Disney dominated animation films for a very long time.
Yeah,
and then
I mean Aladdin came out this.
Yeah, DreamWorks obviously came about. I'm not sure when the actual company started, but I think there was enough at the time to like warrant having this category. But I mean, Shrek was up against Monsters Inc. and Jimmy Neutron the movie.
Mate, we watched Jimmy Neutron the movie the other day.
It's really
it
good.
holds up.
Yeah, it's amazing. Ultra Lord. Yeah, I do love that film.
So good.
Should we move on to the filmography question?
Okay.
Yeah, each week I give Josh a selection of either 2 actors, 2 actresses, or 2 directors, and he's going to tell me which entire filmography he'd rather watch out of the 2. Are you ready?
Always.
First one is Will Ferrell versus John C. Reilly.
I wasn't ready.
Okay.
That's actually really tough. I
mean, when you actually look at the 2 filmographies, it's really not. For me, it's not, but you don't know.
I think John C. Reilly. Like, thinking about it, quite definitely John C. Reilly. He's been in a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
He's in Chicago, which you still haven't watched.
Yeah, I've got written down here the pros and cons of John C. Reilly, and on the pros I put Chicago, but I've never seen it, so in brackets I've put for Josh. I knew you'd bring it up.
It's a bloody great film. And Will Ferrell's been in a lot of shit.
Yes.
Like a lot of shit. He's been in some great ones. Mate.
And also
John C. Reilly's in Gangs of New York.
Yeah, but the thing is, even the pros of Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly is in them.
Guardians of the Galaxy. Mate. Yeah.
Once you think about it,
John C. Reilly, very much so. I
mean, I'll tell you what, I'll list the pros of both. I mean, you can disagree with me or not. The pros of Will Ferrell are Step Brothers, Anchorman, The Other Guys, Stranger Than Fiction, Blades of Glory, Elf, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, The Campaign, and the Lego Movie.
I forgot he was in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. So good.
And the Lego Movie. And then the pros of John C. Reilly are Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Step Brothers, Guardians of the Galaxy, Wreck-It Ralph, Cyrus, Gangs of New York, Chicago, The Thin Red Line, and Carnage. I mean, it's no contest, really.
No, it's not. It's really not.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see Daddy's Home with
Yeah,
Will Ferrell
Yeah, he
and
looks-
Mark Wahlberg, because I can't wait to see them together.
Yeah,
again,
those
'cause
two
I
would
think
be
their
good together,
chemistry
yeah.
is so good.
Yeah.
It's like their chemistry is on par with like Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill. Like,
Yeah.
like that sort of comedy chemistry.
Yeah.
They just know each other.
Right. We have both agreed that John C. Reilly is definitely better.
Yes.
We'll move on to direct question.
Okay.
Danny Boyle, just because last week we talked about Steve Jobs, so I thought it was appropriate.
Yeah.
And Guy Ritchie.
Guy Ritchie's not actually done that many. He's done Lock,
Guy
Stock,
Ri-
Snatch.
he's
He's done
done-
Rock and Roller.
Basically, he did Lock, Stock, Snatch, Rock and Roll. He's in the 2 Sherlock Holmes films.
Yeah.
But he also did a film with Madonna in it called Swept Away,
Right.
which
I
is considered
imagine.
one of the worst
Yeah.
films ever made.
Is it like funny bad, or is it
Um,
like just bad?
Bad. He won Worst Director at the Razzies for it, and Madonna won Worst Actress.
Good. Yeah, but I mean,
So if you want to sit through a film like that, I mean...
what was it? Danny Boyle. Danny
Yeah.
Boyle's got like The Beach. He's got
Again, Danny Boyle's got a really solid
Yeah.
filmography.
I mean, there's not really a Danny Boyle film that I like really dislike. Danny Boyle's got like, I'm looking at his filmography now. He's got Train Spotting. He's got The Beach. He's got 28 Days Later, which like I think rejuvenated the zombie sort of thing because they can run now, which I think scared the shit out of everyone because like that didn't happen. He's got Sunshine, which is a strong piece. Slumdog Millionaire, which I know you don't like particularly.
No, I enjoy Slumdog. I just think it's not his strongest
Yeah,
film, and it shouldn't have been.
No, I completely agree with you. I don't think it's his strongest, but I mean I enjoy it, like you say. He's also got 127 Hours, which is like I gave James Franco like a purpose.
Yeah.
Like he is so good in that. Has Trance with James McAvoy and Rosario Dawson. That's a great film.
Also
the soundtrack for
decent.
Trance is incredible. He's just done Steve Jobs. It's amazing. I think Daniel Boyle, to be fair, I think he's the one I'd go with, because as much as I do love the Guy Ritchie films, there's only so much like South London accent I can take.
I think I'd go Guy Ritchie.
Seriously.
Danny Boyle's films, there is not one that I think, I don't like that, because all his films are pretty solid. Obviously, I love Trainspotting. It's one of my favourites. I love The Beach. And we obviously both love Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
And I also love Shallow Grave as well.
Yeah,
that's really
his
good as
first
well.
film, yeah.
But the others are like films that I enjoyed. I mean, actually, 28 Days Later, I love that as well. But the other ones, like 127 Hours, Slumdog, and Sunshine, they're films that I enjoyed, but not as much as I wanted to, because they were Danny Boyle films. The thing is, the one thing that actually sells it for Danny Boyle is he's got more range. So if you watched his entire filmography, you've got more range within the films.
See,
but
I'm looking at all of these as a block of films. I would have a great day watching these films. Like I would genuinely look forward to watching a day of Danny Boyle. Like I haven't seen I haven't seen Shallow Grave, I haven't seen A Life Less Ordinary, and I haven't seen Alien Love Triangle. I don't know if you've seen any of those.
I've seen Shallow Grave.
Other than Shallow Grave, obviously. But I mean, I look forward to. They might be terrible. Who knows? But I'd be open to watching them for the first time.
But the thing is with Guy Ritchie, Lock, Stock is amazing. Snatch is even better. Like Snatch is incredible. And then you have to watch Swept Away. Like I can sit through a crap film just so I know that I can get to watch Rock and Roller and the 2 Sherlock Holmes films.
Unless it's Body of Lies.
Okay. But it's not, okay. But yeah, the 2 Sherlock Holmes films are brilliant as well. Like I could watch them over and over. And he's obviously got Man from U.N.C.L.E. this year, which I haven't watched, but it looks entertaining
that's
enough.
Meant to be really good.
Yeah.
But it's really weird because they've got like a British guy playing a Russian guy, an American playing a British guy, or whatever it is, or something like that. Ridiculous.
But yeah, I mean,
or a British guy playing an American because it's Henry Cavill, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd look forward to watching that, like in the filmography. But yeah, I think that's and Guy Ritchie's, not that like length of filmography should have anything to do with it. It's like quality of films. I think that he's got like more films that are just absolutely brilliant, whereas Danny Boyle has more film. He has more in films that like are entertaining because he has more films, but they're more films that I would maybe not want to watch again. I don't think I'd want to watch Sunshine again. I enjoyed it up until the end.
I think I could watch Sunshine again relatively happily. I mean, I've only seen it
I'm not
once.
saying it's not saying it's like physically impossible for me to watch it
No.
again. I just wouldn't choose to.
No,
Like if I went home and thought I'm going to put a DVD on,
I don't.
I wouldn't go
I'd put
Sunshine.
I think Sunshine is one of the weaker ones, but I've seen 28 Days Later thousands of times, and I've seen 127 Hours loads of times. Seen Slumdog loads of times. I've
seen Trainspotting loads.
I've only seen Trance once, but I do look forward to watching it again, and I'm definitely going to watch Steve Jobs again. I think Steve Jobs is his coup de grace. Like, I think it's incredible.
Yeah, that is absolutely brilliant.
Mad.
Each week, I mean, me and Josh watch numbers of films a week, and each week we're going to tell you our film of the week. So, Josh, you want to kick us off, mate?
Yeah, sure. I recently watched Draft Day, which is a film about the draft in American football every year in the NFL. It stars Kevin Costner and also Jennifer Garner, who I don't actually normally like, but I think she's quite good in this. She plays quite a strong, like, the assistant sort of thing. The film itself, I mean, I'm really into sports films, especially American football sports films. Chadwick Boseman is in this film as well. He's really good. He's not in it too much, but he is good in when he is. He was in 42, which is, again, another incredible sports film. I mean, this film isn't, like, it's not one of those ones that I'd say is the best. It's basically about the new general manager taking over the Cleveland Browns after his dad, who was coach before him, passed away. And it's about the draft, and they get the number 1 pick from the Seattle Seahawks, and there's a quarterback who is like the best prospect out there, and everyone's like, pick him. But they, at the moment, like at this time, they already have a quarterback who is strong, and it goes through all this process and things like that. There's a lot of actors in it who just play their roles really well, and the film itself, I think, the thing that this film has going for it the best, or the most, should I say, is the ending. It wraps together it's like one of those endings where the whole film's pretty decent, and then the ending's just like, it's perfect. Like that, it all comes together, it clicks in, and it's just a really good watch after you've watched it, sort of thing.
Sweet. My film of the week is The Brothers Bloom, 2008 film, directed by Rian Johnson, who directed Looper and Brick. He's not done much out of ways. They're the only 3 films he's ever directed, and he is going to do one of the Star Wars films. But yeah, this film is basically, I mean, Brick and Looper are quite serious and dramatic films, but this one kind of takes like a really comedic turn. I mean, the cast is Mark Ruffalo, Adrian Brody, and Rachel Weisz, and I think, to be honest, the film is just worth watching just for Rachel Weisz's performance, because she's actually really delightful to watch. Like, she's just really great. She's like really happy and adventurous, and it's really nice to watch. But the thing is, like, at heart, it's a con movie, and Rian Johnson's such a good writer that I mean, I had faith in it before I'd even watched it, and I watched it, and it exceeded expectations. Everyone was on point, and I think what the film does really is basically makes me more excited for films that Rian Johnson is going to bring out, because it's not my favourite Rian Johnson film, but it's really entertaining. This is probably his most entertaining light watch, and everyone's on point, and the whole con is just absolutely brilliant, really well written. And there's a bit which I love when how the whole thing is that Adrian Brody and Mark Ruffalo are brothers. They're the Bloom. No, sorry, they're not the Bloom brothers. Cut that out. They're brothers, and Adrian Brody is Bloom, and Mark Ruffalo is Stephen, and Adrian Brody is kind of like sick of the whole con game kind of thing, and there's a bit where he describes his brother's cons as Russian literature, and he says, I don't really have a life. I am what my brother writes me to be. And for the whole thing, there's this recurring theme of him not really having an unwritten life, and it's really clever. And honestly, Rian Johnson is I'd say up and coming, but he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
I thing you're saying about it being clever, like just going back to draft day, like there are loads of scenes. A lot of this film is made up of conversations between general managers between teams, and them like doing deals and things like that. And it's just like you say, it's incredibly clever, and especially the ending, like all the deals come in and things like that, and it's just so well rounded. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll just say, watch Brothers Bloom. Also watch Brick and Looper.
Yeah, two very good films.
Yeah, this is basically more of a watch Rian Johnson's films, because he is a director to look out for and enjoy, because he's made 3 films and they're all pretty brilliant.
Solid. Right, if you liked all that, like us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/The Weekly Drive-In. Same with Twitter. I think Twitter is just Weekly Drive-In without the. If you don't want to see any behind the scenes stuff, obviously we've been taking pictures and things like that during this broadcast, as we do every week. That'll be all on our Instagram, which is also The Weekly Drive-In. We are now putting all of our shows on YouTube as SoundCloud. We can't be asked to pay for it, so you'll get all those. That's where they'll be. We'll set up a page and we'll put that on like the Facebooks and the Twitters. So do keep posted, and like we say, if you have anything, any comments, anything you like, anything you didn't like, if you disagree with our 12 Angry Men picks, which you shouldn't because they're perfect, just let us know. Give us your picks, and take care, you beautiful people.